Hello, fellow travelers. You're listening to a spooky episode of the Respawn Station podcast. My name is Nick Sivak, and I'm joined by Sri Kandula.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, well, you know what? I need to stop real quick. This will just be a cut to get my light on.
Sure.
All right, that's a little bit better. Like I said, welcome to the Respawn Station podcast. We are going to be talking about our perfect crafting, I should say. We're going to be crafting our perfect horror game. A couple months ago, we did a similar kind of activity with fighting games around Evo, and we thought it might be fun to do the same for the spooky season. But before all of that, we have to ask ourselves an important question, as always, Sri, and that is what we've been playing. So, what have you been playing?
Man, I have committed to what I said about getting into the October mood and playing a horror game. And so since last episode, Nick, not only have I started a horror game, I've finished it.
Woo!
And I've even gone in for a little bit of second dippings.
Oh, nice.
So the game is Alone in the Dark. This is the 2024 reimagining of the 1992 horror game. Now, Alone in the Dark is kind of the original survival horror game, and I mean it predates even Resident Evil, the first one, and I didn't really know what to expect. I've only had one Alone in the Dark experience prior to this, and that's pretty much as a kid. I went into the bathroom, and then my friends shut the lights off and then closed the door on me, and so that was really the only other experience I've had with it. And I also did play for maybe an hour Alone in the Dark on the Wii. I didn't realize all these fucking games were called the same thing. Usually, you add a 2 or 3 after it, but. Yeah, I played Alone in the Dark on the Wii like 15 years ago, and now I'm playing the reimagining of it, starring Jodie Comer and David Harbour. And we were just talking about Stranger Things right before starting the show, so it's fitting. And I'm really mixed on this game. I feel like I'm a little bit less kind of hot on it compared to the last 2 games that I've been playing and talking about. Obviously, Wolfenstein, The New Order, and Tomb Raider Definitive Edition being the other 2. You can read my full thoughts on both those games on RespawnStation.com, and you'll also be able to read my review of Alone in the Dark once I kind of put my thoughts down and gather them and put them down. But to start off, right, Alone in the Dark tells the story of a woman named Emily who fears that her uncle might be getting sick or is sick. He has like a manic episode. He's in this institution, like it's like a manor that's also treating mentally ill patients, it seems. And she also brings a detective, a private investigator played by David Harbour, called Edward Carnby along to kind of just help her if she needs it. And the game starts with this short little kind of catching you up to speed on like what's going on, and pretty much everything I just said it in a little bit more detail. It'll draw it out for you, and then you're given the decision of whether you want to play as Carnby or Emily. And I went with Carnby, and played through the entire game that way. It took about 8 hours to do so. And this is the first really conflicting thing, right? Is that I feel like the idea of splitting it up is cool, but it doesn't fully feel fleshed out. And the reason why I say that is because, I play through as Carnby, and I feel like for a new player, a first player, it's like a good character to play as, because you're going in and you don't fully understand what's going on, and that's kind of what Carnby's approaching. He's like, what's going on? And like kind of just adapting to what's being thrown at him. Maybe some might say to like an alarming degree. This guy's just like, what's going on? Oh, what? I just have to fucking go through that closet? Sure, yeah, I'll do it. But that aside, Emily's character is a little bit more like connected to it. Like the stuff with her uncle, obviously is family related, but also there's this idea of like, what is this like mental illness or a curse that's upon my family bloodline? Like, there's all these things that are going around, and I think Emily's storyline, and so first of all, let me just say, I played through all as Edward, and then I started up as Emily for like the opening of the game, and I was a little disappointed because the whole time I was playing through as the private investigator, I was like, oh, I wonder what she's going through because occasionally in your playthrough as a private investigator, Emily will just show up like 3 or 4 or 5 times throughout the game and be like, "What are you doing? Like, what's so? What are you? What? Why are you in a bathtub? Like, it's just like
Hmm.
weird stuff." And so the whole time, and again, it's like is the one of the benefits maybe of like I recorded the whole thing. It's going up on my channel, but like throughout my playthrough, I'm like, I wonder what she's seeing in her playthrough or what her storyline that she's so confused about what's going on with mine. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And then I play hers, and it's just his playthrough. You just swap the characters. And
Oh.
granted, there are some cutscenes where like in the cutscenes where there's dialogue interactions. I just punched my mic because I'm just so mad about this. It essentially some of the dialogue exchanges are a little bit different, right? Like it's the conversation. Like if the conversation you and I are having will be different from like if a new host came in and had it, right? Like
Hmm.
that's the difference of the cutscenes. But it's not much more than that. You're playing through the same puzzles, the same story beats, and everything else. And so I was a little bit disappointed on that. And I think that there's either one of two things, in my opinion, needs to happen. One, the game should have said, and by the way, I went on the internet. That's a terrible decision to do, I know, but I kind of wanted to see what other people were saying about this game and like specifically Emily's storyline. And I think that Emily's storyline is actually supposed to be more like uh, fleshed out. Like you get more of the story and you understand things a little bit better.
Sure.
And so I feel like the game should have been like, hey, and play as Emily first, and then for New Game Plus, you can play as the detective that she came in with. I think maybe something like that, or they just come double down on the game, and instead of having two different storylines, just have one storyline that's like fully fleshed out. Because as playing as private investigator Edward Carnby, I was like, okay, I'm in for the ride. There's this interesting setup of like the dark man, and you don't know like who that is or what he looks like, and there's a sense of mystery to him. And then in the last act of the game abandons that for like, I mean, I'm not even going to ruin it for you, but let's just say like it goes Lovecraftian real fast, and it took me like my reaction was like, oh shit, what the hell is happening? But at the same time, I didn't feel fully kind of satisfied with with how things kind of shook down in that. But that being said, some of the good stuff that I will kind of say that despite all that, the game has really good visuals, and I'm really surprised. Like this is from Pisces Interactive and THQ Nordic, and Pisces previously have only made, or the only game kind of saw was Magica 2. I might have made other games too, but like that was their big other big game on Steam was Magica 2. So it was very out of their kind of typical wheelhouse, I suppose. But they created a really cool, like really good looking game. I played this on the PlayStation 5 and had kind of minimal issues. I mean, it was like I experienced like one save error thing that bugged me, and then some odd like little glitches here and there. But
Hmm.
by and large, the game plays really smoothly and runs well. So all that stuff, and has good visuals paired with really like good music, especially. There's two different composers for this game, from what I see. One is the more regular dramatic music, but then they also have another that's specifically for this like noir, like jazz, tracks, and they are so good. I'm a really big fan of those, and I'm a sucker for noir. So whenever the game fully commits to it, and there's like a few parts where it's like, there's a noir narration. The blinds have like striking lights coming through, and like that was when I was like really, enjoying the game. But yeah, that stuff is all good. The other kind of again, I feel like I've made a weird sandwich because usually it's like a compliment sandwich. I've somehow come around on it. But the other thing that I think is a little weird is the fighting. The combat is really clunky. Like there's a
Hmm.
dodge, but it's like really loose. There's melee attacks, but they're just like swinging around, and you really have to rely on the like the sound effect of the to like confirm that you've actually have a hit. Um, Guns have they're fine, but like they're a little bit they're like supposed to be realistic. So every time you get a shot off, the hit markers go really wide, and then you have to wait for them to kind of go close again to get an accurate shot. It's cool, but again, just overall the combat's pretty clunky. It's really that it looks really good, the atmosphere is great, and then the thing that I think will either make it or break it for you is that it's a game that I feel like you need a notebook near you to write down puzzles. Like I have my notebook in front of me, and it has like room codes and weird drawings, and I'm like just kind of putting stuff together, and it's not too complicated. And there's actually an old school mode you can play in the game where it doesn't even give you hints. So if you can't figure something out, you're shit out of luck. I did not go with that mode. And I was still shit out of luck, which is very unique. But yeah, I think it's way more fun when you're kind of like having to like write stuff down and like look back up and kind of like put things together. It's more satisfying that way. So it lacks the satisfying kind of maybe narrative conclusion or even like a game like combat, but the visuals and atmosphere are nice, and it has good satisfying puzzles, which kind of maybe make up for it. If I'm kind of being honest, I think right now the game is somewhere between a 6 and a 7. You know, that's kind of where, as I write my review, I'll kind of refine that and I'll find a score. Or if I'm a coward, I'll just let Nick decide for me and be like, Nick, please read this and tell me what you think. But either way, I think for you, if you're listening to this and you want a short horror experience, again, it's about 8 hours. And I don't think the second playthrough is necessary. I would probably say, play as Emily, just if you want to get more story, or Edward if you want more of the kind of like your experience translated through the game. I think it's a great game for that, and especially in October, it's a really easy recommendation. As long as you know that there are kind of a little bit rough edges here and there that you have to work with, and especially like I think the launch price was maybe a little too high for something like that. The production value holds up for the most part, but like a lot of the elements don't really feel like it earns that price rank. But nowadays, I mean, it was like $15 on Steam, I think, recently. And so if you can find it somewhere around there, anything under 20, I think this is just a really solid pick for for the spooky season. Whew,
Yeah.
there it is. I don't think I took a breath in that entire time. I think it was just like fucking flew through whatever I had.
I have two things that I want to ask about it. One, you mentioned the slightly clunky combat. Did that add to any like immersion, like as it being like this girl and this detective? Like, do you think that was like kind of intentional, or did it kind of detract and you were kind of fighting the controls and the combat more than you felt you should have been?
See, it's not even. First of all, I don't think it's immersive because they both play pretty much the same. I don't notice a difference between them. And in case I haven't made it clear, like they're not together. Like it's not a co-op game. It's not a 2-player game. You're alone for the entire playthrough. It's just for certain cutscenes you're kind of see the other person. And it's not the fact that it's immersive in its clunkiness, but it just feels like it feels like the game is being clunky on purpose to make it harder for you to win a fight. I mean, the fucking look. I'm not a huge fan of the monster design. There's only like 3 monsters in the entire game, 4 at the very end. But I'm not gonna get too much into that. But they're really not like how do I say this without spoiling anything? About halfway through the game, there's one enemy that you see, a new variation that only lasts for one like chapter section. That I was like, oh, that's interesting, and the way that that enemy is used is kind of fun. You don't get that again. Like that again. I'll say this: the Dark Man. The Dark Man is kind of set up, and then he's abandoned because they're trying to pursue this different kind of path and what's going on. And I appreciate what's going on, but it's just it's not as satisfying. So I don't think it's fully immersive in that way. And so, when I was playing Emily, I was like, oh, she's just as competent with these weapons, and especially because in the New Game Plus, you start with all the weapons that you had in the playthrough. So she's going through the early parts of the game where you had only a pistol initially, and she's like getting the shotgun out.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different, but enemy designs are pretty they're very repetitive.
Yeah, the other thing is maybe a bit more amorphous, but sometimes when there's a remake coming of a particularly older game, games functioned a lot differently back then. There's a lot of like just kind of assumed knowledge that maybe wasn't clearly communicated to players back then that a remake is able to kind of update and modernize. Did you feel like there was anything like that coming from like the original, just like a weird off the wall puzzle or something like that? Or does it mainly kind of ground it in this like more modern retelling? Basically, did anything stand out as being like weird?
See, that's the thing. From what I've seen, it's a reimagining. I don't actually think it's a direct translation of the game at all. Like I don't know if they're like comparable in that way. There are maybe like 2 sections towards the end of the game where it felt very reminiscent of that old kind of fixed camera, moving around in a space to kind of look for stuff, like very old Resident Evil and stuff like that, which I thought was cool in hindsight. I didn't really appreciate it in the moment, but no, I feel like there's definitely some moments where I was dumb as hell and did not process some of the puzzles properly or whatever. I don't think there's anything too crazy. And again, there is old school if you really want to go for it, but I don't think it's I don't think there's anything necessarily outdated. If that's kind of what you're saying, I don't think there's any outdatedness in it for the most part.
There's just like things that I, when I play some of these newer remakes for like, Silent Hill or Resident Evil, like they have like things from the original games in them, and it's like it maybe stands out as just being a bit like weird in its inclusion or whatever, but it's like this was like, a big thing from the original game. Like I don't even really have like an example, off the top of my head to say, but like different scenarios and situations that they keep over that's like it worked in the 90s, it's a little goofy in a modern retelling, but they somehow figure out a way to make it not as goofy or whatever.
Yeah, I will say that there's definitely things that I was thinking about while I was playing the game that either that they did or they didn't do that I wish they did, that I will be bringing up later in this episode as we build our horror game out, because I think actually there was I just kicked my desk again. I'm so fucking feverish about this. The one thing that I feel like this game does really well, last thing I'll say, it's something that like Layers of Fear does really well, and it's one of my favorite things that horror games can do, or any game really. Like I feel like it's the closest to like the rug getting pulled out from under you that a video game can do in this kind of situation, which is, this doesn't happen exactly one for one, but right, like imagine you're going up to, you enter a room and you have to like see there's a thing on the desk, and so you go in and you interact with it, and then you interact with it, you read it or whatever, and then you close it, and then you turn around and it's like you're in a forest, like it's like that kind of like where it's like, oh what, who just changed the set dressing while I was here, like those. This game does really well. Like, it has some really nice moments where you open a door and you're like, oh yeah, it's like the hallway right here, right? And then you open it and you're like, I'm in a fucking what? I don't want to ruin anything, but you're in a totally different situation. So, yeah,
right on.
That's enough about me, Nick. I know, I think you have your end of the promise to hold up as well. So, yeah, what have you been playing? And you better fucking say it's a horror game that got you spooked.
I do have one. I'm going to save it because I got a couple games here, actually,
yes.
surprisingly. So, the
Fallout's done.
Yeah, Fallout is finally done. I don't know if I had mentioned that, or I think I was still playing it last week, but I am done with New Vegas now. I did 2 different endings, so I'm pretty much good to go on my 80-hour journey through New Vegas again, and
hell yeah,
had a blast. It was so much fun. The crashes got really annoying at the end, though, as I've painted a proper picture of already. I'm going to talk about a really short one first, then we'll talk about the game that I've mainly been playing this week. So the first one I played yesterday, and that is Warhammer 40k Bolt Gun Words of Vengeance. So
hell yeah.
This was just kind of on a whim. I was looking at my Steam library. I was like, I want something short to kind of play right now. Like let's see how long is Words of Vengeance. To my surprise, How Long to Beat lists this game at like 25 minutes. And I was like, oh, this is way shorter than I thought. Like, I thought that this was going to be like a bit more of
2
a beefy
hours,
game.
maybe? I don't know.
this game is essentially a like. This is putting it like maybe a bit more harsh than it's intended. I'm saying this lovingly, I guess, and it's essentially an ad to wishlist Bolt Gun 2 on Steam. But what it is, in case you don't recall, basically this is a version of Warhammer 40k Bolt Gun, which is the retro style boomer shooter. Both you and I played it and talked about it on the podcast before. But this is more inspired by like the Typing of the Dead games, where instead of like running around an environment and, you know, using a mouse or a controller to shoot, essentially what you're doing is the game is on rails, so it moves the character for you. Enemies come into the frame with text boxes above their head, and you have to type the words in the text box to do damage. So essentially, like every letter or two you're typing, the bolt gun is firing into the enemy, and then once you finish the sentence or, you know, short word, basically that's when the enemy dies, and they'll kick out like health and armor and stuff. Words of Vengeance has 3 stages that you go through and 4 difficulties. So I played it for about an hour, and I played through the entire game on easy, normal, hard, and then I played the opening level on the hardest difficulty. And
are they just harder words? Like they're just more complex?
Yeah, it's like harder words and like
supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. You just get one of those.
It's a bit. So like it's longer words, and then it's also like longer phrases on enemies that were like one word on the easy difficulty.
Oh, sure. But
it is all like couched in Warhammer stuff. So like one word might be like I don't know,
Emperor.
Yeah, Emperor. That's a great example. One would be like Emperor. On like a higher difficulty, the same enemy might be like Adeptus Mechanicus. And so you have to like type out like, you know, these words. And it's like, you know, I was constantly like going back and forth between the screen and my keyboard and being like, oh my God, like how do you spell this Warhammer stuff? Like, because as I've mentioned in the past, like I'm very casually into Warhammer. It's like I've played the Space Marine games and Bolt Gun, and that's essentially it. So part of it is like trying to be like, okay, what are they trying to do? There's some pretty funny ones in there. Like sometimes it's just like kill 5 times, and so you're just like spamming kill. What's really nice is that the game doesn't force you to put in punctuation or spaces. So like they might have like a multi-word phrase, but as long as you just bash out the letters, then you're pretty much good to go with that.
Is it a cohesive thought, like as you play through a level, or is it just like random Warhammer words?
Yeah, it's like random phrases and words.
Okay.
It's very tongue-in-cheek. There is like once you get out of the easy mode, like one of the options or like one of the words that'll come up is Rahul Kohli, who voices the main character. So it's like it's very tongue-in-cheek. And as the difficulties go up, like the enemies just kind of like do more damage to you. And so, you know, you have like your armor and your health, like the base game. And I would just notice like going through the level on essentially like the first level is like 2 minutes. And then the following 2 levels are like 5 minutes each. So like they're a bit longer. And as I was going through those longer stages, it's like halfway down, I'd look at my health and be like, oh, I'm at like 50. Like I need to like get a lot faster at this. And then each stage also gives you a ranking at the end. And it'll kind of like the base game, it'll rank like your kills, how long it took to get through the level. Funnily enough, it has your like words per minute like ranking.
Oh, so okay.
And there's achievements tied to that. Like there's an achievement to get like 100+ words per minute time or something like that. I did not get that one, unfortunately, but
dang, Nick,
it was fun. It was exactly what I wanted it to be. It's a fun little thing. And then at the end, the last thing you type in is wishlist Bolt Gun 2, and it blows up all the enemies on the screen. So as like a little free kind of Typing of the Dead-esque game, it scratched that itch, and it was really a fun time.
Nice.
I
think one I'll have to check out just at some point, because I know I know it's not like the Bolt Gun experience, but it's like a fun take on, just like a fun little side quest to throw in there.
Exactly. Yeah, I think if you're looking for something like really short to just like play and be like, oh, that was fun, I think it's a really good fit. But yeah, that was a short game. How about the main game that I've been playing this week? So we got a review code for a game called Dreams of Another, which you may or may not remember. It was in a Sony State of Play earlier this year, I believe. It's
Yeah.
from Q Games and Pixel Junk. And if the name doesn't sound familiar or the talent behind it doesn't sound familiar, what might sound familiar is that it had shots of a man wearing pajamas holding an assault rifle and shooting around the environment, and things are coming together. It's very trippy, very weird art direction here.
Yeah,
So that's
and it's definitely one that caught our eye when it was announced. 'Cause I think we did. I don't know if it was a full recording or we just kind of hopped in a Discord call and we're chatting while we're doing it. But yeah, I remember seeing that game and like, oh, that's a looks at the very least it looks very interesting. So I'm very curious about if it does anything more than that.
Yeah, very striking art style. I have finished this game, so I played through the
nice.
whole thing. It took me about 6 hours, so short, but I'll expand upon that in a bit.
Short
here.
but longer than you expected.
Yeah. So this game, I am a bit flummoxed by, if I'm being honest, with my thoughts on it. So I have notes written down. There's going to be like an actual review on respawnstation.com for this, but just kind of going from my gut reaction of finishing it last night. It's a game that I'm not going to say is bad. I don't think it's a bad game. I did not have much fun playing it, though. And so that's kind of like the thing that I'm wrestling with right now, is that it feels more like, I could say, if you look at the gameplay for it, that it's like a third-person shooter. And like, that is correct. It's more so like a interactive narrative game, I guess you would say, because while there is shooting with a gun, it feel like I liken it more to like almost like a power wash simulator, where it's like you are kind of like going into these levels and just kind of shooting everything to get a lay of the land. And the reason that I say that is that I kind of have to build this up a little bit. So essentially the game, it's called Dreams of Another, and it's very dreamlike in nature. I don't want to get like super into it because there is like a narrative like reasoning for it. But essentially there's these 4 different stories that you're kind of bouncing between in these dream worlds. And the art style kind of ties into this as well, in that I think they call it like point cloud technology. But essentially what it is like everything in the environment and the characters and everything are made up of like these little squares, essentially, that are kind of like pixels, and they kind of like come together to form shapes, buildings, items in the environment, your character, everything like that. And when you plop yourself into a dream, they call it like abstraction, essentially. And the way that I'll describe it here is it's like, when you have a camera stream and you take it completely out of focus and you get these like bokeh like circles, essentially.
Yeah.
It's very much like that when you are plopped into a level. It's just bubbles, essentially, of color all around you. And as you shoot your weapon at these things, it's almost like you're like focusing it.
Comes into focus.
So there's
I
like
see.
items and levels that are placed down, like they're in a static location, and as you shoot around your surroundings, you'll see like trees form, or like benches, or like the street in front of you forms, characters that you can talk to form. And so you're plopped into this level, you kind of start just shooting what's around you to try to get a lay of the land, and then you start seeing like characters that you can talk to, or your character, who's just called the man in pajamas, has like an ability that he's able to listen to the thoughts of basically inanimate objects. The game calls them sentiments. And so like essentially, for example, what's a good one that I can give you? Like there's one where like you come up to a door on a building, and the door is like, it must be pretty lonely being a door that no one uses. or something like that. And so like it's a very philosophical right, I'm saying that right? That sounds weird.
Yeah.
It's a very philosophical game. It asks a lot of questions. It's a very like artistic game. And so a lot of it is these musings on destruction and creativity and artistry, and like the big theme that like has been around the marketing of the game is there is no creation without destruction. And so I knew that going into the game, and I was trying to like contextualize a lot of what I was seeing and hearing under that guise, or like that theme.
Right.
And like it does have some moments that kind of resonate with that, but a lot of it, the way that I described it to a buddy of mine, I was like, it feels like the type of game that makes perfect sense to the person that made it, but not anybody else to me. Like it's
sure.
And I don't want that to sound like rude, but like there's plenty of moments in the game where it's like stuff is just being said and I'm like, what? like what are we trying to say like with this stuff? And it's not even like anything bad or anything. It's just like there was one specific towards the end of the game where it was a trash bag that I was listening to, and it was having like weird thoughts about how like humans buy trash bags and put those trash bags into plastic bags to put other bags into, and it went into this whole thing, and I'm like, what? Like I don't even understand what's going on here. So yeah, like the narrative, it has some moments. Like I said, it's 4 different like sub stories that you're kind of bouncing between, and there's one where it's like about this family that's about to move, and this kid wants to hear this piano in the town square again. There's one about these fishes that want to escape this aquarium and explore the ocean. There's one about people trying to find these. There's like a talent competition for robots to see who would be like, you know, able to succeed this artist essentially. And then there is one about this amusement park with a bunch of broken rides in it. And so you bounce between these stories, and when I say you bounce between them, this is where like the structure of the game kind of comes in and is also kind of confusing. So like you're plopped into a level, you kind of shoot around, you talk to a couple different NPCs or whatever, a couple different items. And then after a certain point, the level like fades out essentially, and you're plopped into the next story. And you do like a little bit of the same thing. You shoot your environment, you talk to people, fade out, next thing. And then you do it again. And then this time it fades out, but it boots you back to the main menu, which is the man in pajamas like asleep. And it's like start, options, all that. So then you boot in and it puts you into a different level, like when you come back, or like the next part of the level of the kids, let's say, that are moving away.
Right.
And it's very weird because like parts of it are told like out of sequence, and like I don't mind that part, but it's like it's seriously like 4 or 5 minute chunks, and then it's just like, okay, on to the next one. And I don't know if they're doing it like to try to keep
your attention span.
Yeah, like your attention span, or like trying to vary up the environments, because they are very different like colors and different environments and characters that you're talking to. So I don't know if it's just like people would get bored if you just stay in one and do the task for one story and then move to the next one or not. I could see that being a thing, but like I really don't understand why it kicks you back to the main menu for so many of them. And like the menu screen changes over time, but it's like almost like every single time you go back there, it's like a little bit pulled out more. Maybe you see like a shadow of a person this time, and it gets into the wider narrative essentially. So again, I don't really want to spoil that, but it happens a lot. Like it happens like maybe like 30 or 40 times that it just kicks you to the main menu, and it's like I feel like it doesn't need this. The other thing with the structure that I don't love, or like just the presentation, I guess, is that everybody talks in a very weird and disjointed way, and I fully understand why. It's very dreamlike. Like that is how you would describe it. But when you're talking to people and they're like, I didn't know I wanted to go to the park today. Like, that's how, like, the cadence of a lot of the dialogue is in the game. And it just feels like it goes on and on and on for very small sentences. I will be honest, it got to the point where towards the end of the game, I just started kind of skipping through dialogue once I was finished reading it, because like I would start reading it and then they'd be like a third of the way into the sentence. I'm like, okay, like I kind of get it. Like I got it a couple hours ago, seriously. So it's weird because like at the same time, I opened this up saying that I don't think it's a bad game. I definitely don't think it's my type of game. Like I thought the gameplay was a bit repetitive. Essentially, you know, you get the machine gun, which is your main tool that you're using. You get a couple of upgrades, like you get these grenades and you get like a rocket launcher at one point. And that's a little bit fun also, but basically it's just two different things that clear out more of the environment when you use them.
Right.
And so I want to, on top of that, there is an upgrade system. And essentially you pick up these seemingly useless items throughout the entire game. It'll be like a battery that's completely drained, or like a cup of noodles, or a coin. Like, it's like random stuff that essentially is described like I just described it. It'll be like, you know, a handkerchief that is used, or, you know, a lid to a cup. Like, it's very mundane, like, things that don't really have much meaning. And they kind of, basically, there's this character that's called the Wandering Soldier. The two, like, main characters that you're interacting with are this Wandering Soldier and your player character, the man in pajamas. And you give the Wandering Soldier these items, and he will refill your ammo for the grenades and the rocket launcher, because you have a finite amount of ammo with that. The machine gun just has unlimited ammo, so you don't have to worry about that. And there's abilities that you get, but the only abilities that I got through the entire game were just like the ability to sprint and like the length of time that you can sprint. And the upgrade system, you get these upgrades by giving the Wandering Soldier these bits of junk, but it's not like every time. It's like you give him something. It's like you can choose to give him something, or you can choose an option that's like just let him pick something and he'll randomly take something from your inventory. And sometimes, like every single time you get an ammo refill, but like sometimes you would get an ability, and then most of the time after a certain point I just stopped getting abilities, and he's just like, gee, I wonder, do people care about, you know, this stuff that they discard and stuff? Like he'll just say something along those lines, and it's just like, okay,
sure.
Like it's not really described all that well, and I think that's intentional. Like, honestly, like I don't think you're really supposed to understand how the upgrades are served to you, so I don't know if it's just like at a certain level or something you get a specific upgrade. But it was just kind of confusing, and that's where I think a lot of my struggles with the game are. It's like I think that the narrative didn't really grip me all that much. Like I said, there's moments here that are cool. Like there's a part where, like, not to give any of the context, but there's a part where you're like breaking colored pencils, and you use like the triggers to snap the pencils. On the flip side, there's 12 pencils, and you have to snap all 12 pencils very slowly as you picks up each one. So it's like there's cool moments with it. The gameplay is functional. Like the shooting feels nice. It's just there's not much to shoot. You're just kind of like a fire hose, just kind of spraying everything, really. Occasionally there's these little like targets that appear that you have to shoot for various objectives, but it's like, oh, there's the blue target, go shoot the blue target. Like, so it's not really like engaging on a gameplay front. The narrative I thought was more confusing. The art direction, I will say, is great. It's definitely the highlight for me. I think the technology that they have working into this like point cloud system is really cool. It has a very distinct visual look, which I think is exceedingly hard to pull off for games these days. The music is good. It's very dreamlike, and, you know, it reminded me a lot of PS2 games, like their soundtracks. It's very like
Sure.
synthy and kind of like atmospheric, but not in like a dark way. It's like light and dreamy and everything.
Right, right.
But it is like kind of repetitive, and there's only like a couple tracks in the game, so it's like adding into the length of the game and how many other aspects are repetitive. The music kind of like starts to just fold into that kind of vibe as well. But at the same time, like I can't really, while it sounds like I'm just kind of complaining and throwing a bunch of stuff out with the game, like I can't sit here and be like, I had a bad time playing it. I didn't have fun, but I don't think that this is kind of the game that is really designed for you to have fun. It's an artistic expression that you experience, right? And I think that it's cool that it exists, but it's also the kind of thing where I'm just like, I don't know if I would really recommend like you go and play it
Sure.
for that instance, right? Because it's like it took me 6 hours, and I feel like if the structure kind of bolted down a bit more, they removed a lot of the like random jumping to the main menu, if the dialogue was just kind of spoken a tiny bit more naturally, I feel like 2 hours of this runtime would have been taken out, and I feel like the game would have been paced a lot better. Because definitely by the end of it, I was like, okay, like I understand what the ethos of this is. I'm not like having like a blast playing it. I'm kind of ready for it to finish, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but then you'd cut, being a 6 hour game, you're cutting a third of the game game runtime out.
I mean,
so, yeah.
honestly, yeah, like it's a very tricky game. I'm still trying to think through my thoughts on it fully. There's parts to like here. I would say if you're definitely the type of player that's interested in like very artistic experiences, and you would like to go through a game that talks about creativity, about expression, about, artistry, and you're okay with a bit of like, trying to wrap your head around certain narrative ideas and stuff, I think you probably actually would have a pretty good time with it. I do think that, like, visually speaking, like I said, I think that's definitely the strongest aspect of the game. I really have no qualms with it on that front. I think technical wise, like, the game runs fine. It had a very nice frame rate. Like, I didn't get any game crashes or anything like that. So it's like, it's a well built game. I just think I have a lot of issues with like the design of the game, like the gameplay, and overall, like, subjectively speaking, like I just didn't really like grasp the narrative in a satisfying way. It's like I get what they're going for, but at the end of the day, I was just kind of like, it didn't.
Sure, right.
I guess it didn't emotionally invest me in any way. And on top of, like, going off of that, on top of the slow kind of dialogue, most characters and items in the environment speak very monotone. So it's also like feeding into that dreamlike thing, but it's like, I went to the store today to buy this thing. Like, it's like many of the characters don't really have like character, if that makes sense. Like, the wandering soldier is definitely like a defined spoken, character. And there's a character called Mr. Cricket who works at the amusement park. Those are like the two characters that kind of stick out in my head. And everything else is just like an inanimate object or like a random NPC that's like talking in this moment. So like, it's just, there's not a whole lot to latch onto, I think, emotionally speaking, which I think also kind of feeds into why I don't think that the narrative really hit all that hard. But yeah, I don't want to take forever on Dreams of Another. I think if you're the type of person that likes to experience indie stuff that's a bit out there might be something to enjoy here. If you're looking for a fun third-person shooter that tells a trippy story, I don't think it really meets my expectations on that front.
Have you ever played Everybody's Gone to the Rapture?
I have not. I've seen I think some gameplay a long time ago, but never played it.
I mean, I've only seen this game in that one state of play that we saw, but from the way you're describing it, sort of reminds me of that game, but it's a little bit different. I'd recommend everybody's gone to the Rapture, but it has this yeah, it has this like weird ethereal feel to it, and you interact with orbs of light around this town as you explore, and then as you get to them, that like they'll kind of play out a few scenes, and then it'll kind of slowly unlock the rest of the narrative path. So yeah, there's certainly a unique market for these kind of cerebral experiences, I think, and I do appreciate games taking the time to make you think of like, hey, like there's some sort of intent behind it, and then you need to give it that time to maybe fully understand it. But I also think that I mean, as someone who's made stuff like that in the past, I mean, I know what the virtues of solitude is, or sounds, and it's certainly like a real gamble of like, you know, because you're obviously asking for that commitment from the audience to be like, hey, I need your attention for this much, and I need you to commit to thinking about it. And if you're not hitting the right people, there's uh, probably a majority of people who look at it and be like, I don't fucking get it, like it's kind of like that thing. But then
Mm-hmm.
that one, two people that really like it strikes a chord with will be like, oh, this is so like I can't stop thinking about it, and it'll really hit home. But yeah, there's Dreams of Another.
Yeah, if nothing else, it is certainly a very unique game. So cool that it got made. Yeah,
Right.
that's probably what I would leave that at. Again, like I said, review incoming and score. I have no idea how I'm going to handle that for this one, but
Yeah.
I still have a little bit to
You
chew
you
on.
could you could write it and then send it to Nick, and then Nick will
Yeah.
tell you what score it is. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, Dreams of Another. I did start one other game after I finished Dreams of Another, and here's my little October tease. One of my little games. It's a sequel to a game that you and I talked about previously last year. That is The Evil Within 2, and this is I only played about like an hour and a half or so, so I'm still early going with it. But this was exactly what I wanted to play right now. I was between a couple different horror games, and I was like, you know what? I want
Yeah.
third person, over the shoulder, survival horror. Evil Within 2 is the only one that fit that bill. So I decided to boot that up, and it's kind of interesting, even from the start screen, because like this isn't exactly a thing anymore, but it popped up with a Bethesda net like logging in kind of load bar, and I'm like, oh yeah, Bethesda
Oh
net.
yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
would have been prime Bethesda net time, because Evil Within 2, I believe this came out in like 2018, so before pre-acquisition, essentially, when they were starting to
Yeah.
do all this like servicey kind of online stuff. There's not any weird gameplay stuff with this, but when I got to the main menu, it was like, because I had BethesdaNet like signed in or whatever, it gave me access to like a bonus mode and like bonus like options things and there. So I was like,
Damn,
okay,
bonus mode.
yeah, it's like it's the Akumu mode, which is like their like hyper hardcore mode.
Oh, okay.
So essentially, like I was right at the first moment. I was like, okay, that's kind of wonky and weird. I wasn't expecting that. Then I'm going through my, initial settings that all of us do when we start a new game, your brightness adjustments, stuff like that. And it comes up with a option to uncap the frame rate, which is not something that I'm typically used to on console games. Like, obviously, that's a PC thing. You can uncap the frame rate on a ton of stuff.
I would say I'm not used to it on a 2018 game. Like maybe a modern game, I can expect it to,
Mhm.
have that feature. But like that's crazy. The back is it like was that added in as like a patch?
I
Because
think
that's
I think it was a patch thing, because it was saying like you have the option to uncap the frame rate, and this would have been around the time of PlayStation 4 Pro coming out, so I'm thinking that might have been.
what are you playing it on? PlayStation?
I'm playing it on PS5,
Okay.
which it is
Yeah.
a PS4 game. It does not have a native PS5 version, as far as I'm aware, and so basically the frame rate toggle is like you can uncap it and it'll go, above the standard 30 FPS. And I was like, well, I don't want to play in 30 FPS, so I'm definitely going to play uncapped. And so far it's been very smooth. I haven't even really noticed any sort of fluctuation. So the PS5 is handling it beautifully. Then they also popped up a thing where it's like you can play in first person mode in this game. And I was like, I forgot that they added first person to this game too. I'm not playing it in first person mode. I'm doing the traditional third person.
That's see, I Evil Within 2 is on my list, and first person mode, dude, that'd be 100%. That's how I got to play it.
And this is all before I even hit start game. Like I'm just like going through these options. I'm like, what the heck? There's so much random stuff going on with this game. But eventually I got through all my settings and started the game. And the thing that is immediately recognizable, again, this is going to sound super obvious, the visuals have gotten a significant upgrade over the first game.
Oh, sure.
The first game...
I mean, the original is like the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 game.
Yeah,
so.
It's a cross-gen game, but it's definitely on the earlier side of that cross-gen where, like you said, it looks like the older kind of console versions. This lighting is way more dramatic. The modeling is, way crisper. The environments look a lot more like a game that you would... realistically like a game that's a more modern game that we have in 2020s or whatever. So
yeah,
I feel like I described that really stupidly, but visually it looks a lot more enhanced than the original.
Yep.
It essentially picks up shortly after the first game. Now we are about a year removed from the first game and our conversations.
Yeah,
I remember bits and pieces of it. But essentially, like, a character pops up from the first game, and I'm like, what was your relation here again? And like, based on the conversations, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm a little bit caught up here now. So there's, like, a little bit of rust that I have to shake off with, like, the narrative stuff. But essentially, they don't really... It's not long before they throw you back into the, the survival horror and the action. So, still has the trippy kind of environment stuff, at least in this opening level. Really kind of cool atmosphere, and like, I don't want to spoil it because you might play it in the nearish future, but like, the first kind of, let's say, horror thing that you come across, I'm like, whoa, that's trippy and weird, and very, very Evil Within coded, I guess we'll say. So still has like the green gel from enemies. You still kind of level up and enhance Sebastian's abilities, upgrade weapons, that sort of stuff. But it also is taking elements from other games, so you can pick up bottles kind of like Last of Us and use them as distractions or throw them at enemies. There is more like crouching and sneaking around enemies now, and I'm still too early to fully say this, but it does seem like it's more open environments than the more like kind of level structure.
I've heard that about the second game, yeah.
Because like the first like chapter is like a defined level, and then the second chapter that I played, like I got to a specific safe house, we'll call it, and like it just immediately ticked over to the next chapter, but there was no like load screen or break or anything like that. So I think it's going to plop you into more open areas and then maybe funnel you into more traditional levels for specific things. You have this overarching goal where you're looking for these 5 people. So I imagine it's going to be kind of bicycle wheel where it's like, go over here to find this person, and then they'll funnel you into more traditional levels. The only other thing that stands out as being a bit odd to me is Sebastian himself. He is recast in this game, so he doesn't sound the same. And I don't know if it's just me and the recency of when I played this, but he kind of gives me like Max Payne 3 Max kind of vibes, where it's like, this is the same person you're playing as, but he's characterized and performed kind of differently. And so it's like, it has like this weird kind of disconnect where it's just like, this definitely is the same person, but he's kind of acting in a different way, and that mixed with the different actor or whatever, like it's a bit odd is all I'll say.
It's a different interpretation.
Yeah, exactly. So having a lot of fun with it so far. I have a feeling like like I said, that this is exactly the kind of game that I wanted to play right now. So I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with it. And I'm just kind of looking forward to seeing where it goes, because we both were pretty positive on the first game. And I know that amongst the fan base for The Evil Within, it's pretty like polarizing, whether you like the first game or the second game. Both of them have their fans, but then those fans don't usually like the other game. So
crossover, yeah.
It'll be interesting to see where I land on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that we both have. I mean, honestly, I wasn't expecting to have finished Alone in the Dark. It just was a very, rather short game. But yeah, I'm glad we have some sort of horror game stuff going on. I always love doing that in October, and I feel like I missed that last year because of everything going on. I was on the middle of a move last year, so this year I definitely want to. Yeah, I already got one off the list, and I'm sure I'll, by the next episode I'll have some other horror game that I'll queue up, and so yeah. And I feel like Evil Within 2 might be a pretty long one, but we'll see. I mean, I've heard it's longer for sure than the first one, and I've also heard about the open area aspect of it as well.
I looked it up on how long to beat last night because, like I said, I was going between a couple different games, and I think main plus extras was about like 15 to 17 hours. So like long, but not like crazy long.
Sure, right, yeah. So stay tuned. Obviously, come back for more Respawn Station After Dark, as Nick has said it, all month long here on the Respawn Station podcast. Now, it's time, Nick. We've talked about the games. Now it's time to talk about the news.
Yeah.
There's not too much going on, but we have a few things worth kind of bringing up to stay in the loop. So Where do you want to begin?
Let's talk about Dan Forden first, who, if you are not aware, he is a audio director, or I should say was an audio director for NetherRealm, so the studio behind Mortal Kombat. They're announcing their departure from the studio after 36 years, and maybe Dan Forden, the name doesn't ring a bell, but if you've ever heard Toasty for Mortal Kombat, that is Dan. And I originally wasn't going to include this in our news rundown. I saw, GameSpot and IGN and all these kind of outlets sharing that. But the more I thought about it, I was like, man, Mortal Kombat has some crazy audio design for like the last several decades, right? It's like, I would argue next to the over-the-top gore and like, just the gameplay of it, the audio is like the biggest part for these games. Like, you just think of like the X-ray moves with like the bones cracking and like when blood starts going everywhere, it just sounds like fruit being like mashed together and stuff. It's definitely a long career at that studio, and certainly like a pretty incredible result and talent that they've been able to contribute to those games. So thought it would be cool to give a shout out there. Not sure if it was a retirement or just like leaving and going somewhere
leaving the company,
but I would assume if you're there for 36 years, you probably had a pretty good time during all that. Next up, let's do Assassin's Creed Mirage, because I think I don't know how much we'll have specifically to say on this, but they did announce that the game is getting a free DLC titled Valley of Memory, and I was reading a little bit about it. Sounds like it's about like 6 hours long. It follows Basim, who's the main character from Mirage, kind of like following his father's footsteps, or like something about that narrative angle to the game. I've not personally played it, so I don't know where exactly that's being placed, but it is like a short kind of expansion that's being added to this game with additional missions and stuff like that.
Even with this included, it'll probably be like 20 hours total, because I think the main game is like 13, 14 hours or so. So yeah, more contained game. But I'm surprised that they were actually... I mean, another mainline Assassin's Creed game has come out since this one, and it's interesting that they're still going back. I mean, it's a good thing, but it's just very unexpected.
Yeah, and like cool that it's free and everything. Like that's always exciting.
Yeah.
More content for a game that you like. But yeah, I felt the same way. I was like, it gave me pause at first because I was like, Shadows is out, right? I was like, yeah, they're
Yeah.
DLC for the last one. So just kind of an interesting
Yeah.
little
The,
development.
there's also this word, and I'm very curious about it because I think it opens up this an interesting idea. I don't know if you've seen this, but this canceled Assassin's Creed game. Have you seen this?
I briefly saw that before we started recording. Yeah.
It was essentially a canceled Assassin's Creed game that was set during the Civil War, where you played as a slave, like a person who used to be a slave, and then you're going around fighting the Ku Klux Klan. Is kind of like the bullet points summary of it, and then I think it was canceled, maybe partly because of the Assassin's Creed Shadows backlash regarding that character Yasuke and all that stuff. I haven't played Shadows yet, but I feel like that would have been a Civil War Assassin's Creed would have been really interesting. And also, I feel like it would have been interesting to have it. I don't know. I feel like that would have more of the Black Flag DNA than some of the more modern Assassin's Creed games that are more expansive RPGs and stuff.
Hmm.
I don't know if it would. Let's see. It's so weird because it's like in your head, like it feels like a game where the bad guys or the KKK is as simple as being like, oh yeah, it's like Wolfenstein. Yeah, sure. Like of course, yeah, like they're the bad guys.
Yeah.
But now it's interesting that you have to say that that's a risky thing to do, but it's clearly it was risky enough for them to reconsider and cancel the game. So
Yeah. I'm also like always curious about how unrelated to, social context for these things.
yeah,
I'm always curious by where Ubisoft draws the like progression line for Assassin's Creed because there's like
sure,
there's Syndicate, which is like Industrial Revolution, I think, for
yeah,
roughly there. There's this, which would have been like Civil War, so we're getting like kind of further along, and then there's the Chronicles game that's like World War One, I think, and it's like. I think Assassin's Creed always works best when it is like firmly rooted in like a historical setting, and the closer they get to like more contemporary modern things, at least for me personally, it feels like it kind of comes apart a little bit. Like it I just think it works better if it's like several centuries removed or whatever versus like, oh, within the last like 100 years, there was a assassin and the Templars or whatever. I don't even know how much the Templars really play into it anymore, but I'm always curious about where they draw that line.
wait till you guys hear about the canceled Assassin's Creed game where it was actually an assassin who kills Osama bin Laden. That's a cut. You didn't see that, but it's modern history. You wouldn't understand. I feel like so like I was saying, I kind of just recently moved up my gaming setup and everything to be a little bit more focused, and part of that meant I had to take out every single game I had and, clean it, clean all the shelves and then put it back into the new place and then put the games back in alphabetical order. And I kept going over, I have like six sort of seven Assassin's Creed games across like four different generations or whatever, or four different consoles. And we're coming to a point where I feel like I have to hit that. I don't have a Far Cry game, like I said last time, that I need to play. It's on my backlog. So maybe an Assassin's Creed game will fill that void for me. Because apparently, according to if you didn't watch last episode, we talked about our favorite open world games, and I had I had a whole fucking category for just Ubisoft games coming out. So, I'm sure that itch has to be treated eventually, relatively soon. But we'll see if I can make it past October. And there's sorry, Nick, but there's actually also a little bit related to what we're going to talk about, but as I was reorganizing my shelves, and also after the last episode, I was like, man, I really want to play Skyrim so bad. Like it's just like I want that kind of specific type of open world, and Oblivion's right around the corner. So I'm like, okay, can I hold myself off to see, I mean, it's like literally a week, I think, right?
Mhm.
Till
I
that comes out.
believe
So
it's the 13th that the physical copies come out. So
but yeah, by the time you see this, it'll be out, and hopefully I can yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting, what it's like a surprise every episode we come in, what game we decide to actually bite the bullet on.
mhm. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I have no idea if I'll have the time for it. I'm certainly buying it, but who knows at this point.
In your order, is it Oblivion versus Outer Worlds 2? You think what one has the upper hand?
I don't like thinking about this. Right now, I'm more interested in playing Outer Worlds 2 because it's more of an unknown quantity. Most people have sung the praises of Oblivion, so I have a pretty good idea that I'll enjoy that. Outer Worlds 2, I also have a good idea that I'm going to enjoy it. It's just like I want to see how they've improved over the first game. But at the same time, with all this like Halloween games and stuff, it's like I don't even know if I'm going to get to Outer Worlds 2 right now. So,
hey man, for the low price of $30 a month, you can get it on day one on Game Pass.
What a bargain. That and Fortnite Crew.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of the Xbox Game Studios, some former ZeniMax Online Studios developers have formed a new employee-owned studio called Sackbird Games. This was also pretty breaking when I was writing up our rundown here. And apparently, I was reading it from GameSpot. According to their website, apparently they mentioned that there's less than 10 developers working at the studio right now. So definitely a small team, probably looking to build over the coming years. But they mentioned that whatever game that they are making will be available on PC and consoles, and they're definitely taking some creative / employee focused kind of design ethos to the game. There's a lot of mentions of, not wanting ideas to be shot down by corporate oversight and stuff like that. So sounds like it's going to be like a smaller indie team, and taking a lot of experience from the years working at ZeniMax Online Studios and ESO, and specifically Project Blackbird, they mentioned. So who knows what type of game it'll be, but there's always, for every studio that closes, there's another studio that seems like it pops up from those same people. So always good to see that.
It's interesting because I'm looking at their website, and it's, obviously it says everything Nick said about, their former Elder Scrolls Online developers, and also the core developers from the ambitious but ultimately canceled Project Blackbird. And then they have a thing that's saying, as reported by Bloomberg, and if you click on it, the title, I didn't even see this Bloomberg article before, but it says the title of it is Xbox executives were blown away by an upcoming game, then they canceled it. And I feel like that's just the epitome of what's going on with the Xbox at the moment.
Yeah. We don't have a specific bad news from Xbox segment this
there you go.
But, give it time. They'll surprise everybody.
Yeah.
I really want to get your take on this one, Sri. Nintendo. So
this fucking Nintendo.
The other day they released this animated short on social media called Close to You. And it's about like an infant essentially like losing its pacifier, and it's like bouncing around the room and stuff. Just kind of like a cute little short. I sent a joking response to you where I was like, Nintendo just wants to be Disney, because it reminded me of like a Disney short that you'd see in front of like a random like Pixar movie.
Yeah.
Bit confusing. No context at all. No kind of write up or anything. Just the title in the tweet and / Instagram post and the animated short. Then I believe it was today. It was either today or yesterday.
Yeah, it was today. Yeah,
they got us. Nintendo today, their social app thing that they've been, posting unique scoops, I guess, to, gets a different version of this animated short that is the same structure, the same shots and everything, but now there's Pikmin in it, and Pikmin
the
are
Pikmin layer of animations are now unhidden.
Exactly, and they were the ones that's like kind of causing this pacifier to bounce around the room and stuff. And this is weird, right? Like I don't really.
It's weird, but honestly, it's like such a interesting like. See, here's the thing. I find at the surface level, I think this is like cool because it's this idea of you set up one thing that like is just weird enough to catch people's attention, and then you follow it up with like, oh, it's okay, it's good promo. I see what you're doing, but also if we give it the time of thought that maybe Dreams of Another requires of like thinking about what it's saying, there's more interesting implications of like the Pikmin and like how they interact with the world, or like what the baby, like what I don't know. There's a lot going on there, but honestly, I dig the decision to of all the ways that people can fight for attention. I think it's a good one.
Yeah, Nintendo Today, like I've not installed it or downloaded it or anything like that. I feel like I probably will at some point. Clearly, it seems like I'm curious, do you think that this is more of like a marketing stunt? Like, do you think that they have like something that this is like leading to, or was this just like
Didn't they have a Pikmin movie?
Or like a DLC for Pikmin 4 or something like that? Like, I don't know if this is necessarily teasing something, or if it's just like, hey, Nintendo Pictures, this is our animation test, right? And here, like you said, activate the Pikmin layer for Nintendo Today, and there's your exclusive content on there for a day. Like,
I think it's just like a little kind of smart little marketing ploy, I suppose. I would be shocked if they had something more to this. I mean, I knew when I watched the original, I was like, okay, there's something with this. It was either like I saw a lot of people theorizing Pikmin, but I was like, whoa, it could be Alarmo 2. You don't know. You don't know where this goes. You know.
You don't.
But it's Nintendo. You never know. But that being said, I think this one's a good one. I would be interested to see, or like I would be shocked if they actually are like, hey, here's I don't know what they even like. Here's a feature length film coming soon of of Pikmin.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
The one thing that I'm curious about now is like, does this open the floodgates? Is like, are we going to be sitting watching a Nintendo Direct in the future, and it's just like a really weird, like half-finished trailer for something, and then on Nintendo Direct, it's like, oh, it was the new Mario game. We just like removed Mario and all the enemies and characters and stuff out of it. Like, I don't think that they'll do that.
See, I feel like this app, I feel like is so stupid because I feel like it's, this goes on to a bigger conversation, but I feel like the idea is there's so much vying for attention nowadays in the gaming sphere, because there's only a certain amount of people that are playing games and you have to capture that audience. I get it, but it used to be that like this one event happened, and then this one event would have all the stuff that you have to talk about, and you soak it in, you revel in it, you rewatch, and then you move on. Mm-hmm. But like, why is this on the Nintendo app? Like, why? It just feels like such a weird thing. It would have been, I don't know. I feel like this would be a great, like, the day before a Nintendo Direct, you see the trailer we got yesterday or whatever, and then like during the Direct, they play the full thing, and you're like, oh, it makes so much sense. And I don't know, it's missing maybe the sense of community that those kind of events usually have. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah,
the Nintendo Today app is stupid.
Maybe they just wanted people like us to talk about it. And
fuck, they worked.
Yeah, mission accomplished, I guess.
Yeah.
The last kind of thing we had in news rundown here is Expedition 33. They announced that they've sold 5 million copies, which is awesome. And yes, golf clap, nice. And along with that news, there is also a free update coming to Expedition 33 that'll have like new costumes, a new dungeon environment, and game localization stuff, and more surprises. So, cool.
Surprise, motherfucker.
I just felt like I wanted to add some live
not
reaction,
even
but no,
out of context. That could just show up with Expedition 33 with how they have that game. But yeah, great game, great community, like developer relationship, I feel like, and this just kind of strengthens that. So They're really painting themselves a nice picture of themselves when they walk up to collect 18 awards at the Game Awards this year.
Yeah, very, very like like Larian energy in terms of like how they're rolling it out. They're celebrating the good stuff, and they're like, hey, we're gonna keep giving you more of what you got, and so yeah, obviously huge. I mean, congratulations to that whole team, because like when we were at Gamescom, there was so many people dressed up as characters from Expedition 33, and it was definitely like the cultural kind of touchstone game, I think, for pretty much all of the major events happening this year. I'm sure every the Game Awards or whatever will have a bunch of people cosplaying as Where's Waldo's second cousin or whatever. I don't know what the character's name is, but yeah,
I don't even
super
want to
cool
say
though.
what the character's name is. It's just Where's Waldo.
Yeah, and you can go back probably about a month to the start of season 2, and you'll hear Nick's full review on Clear Obscure.
Yeah. Short, abridged version. It's really good, and it's deserving of all the praise it's getting. So if you've been enjoying listening so far, do be sure to check out respawnstation.com. That is our website of which this podcast was born from. Basically, you can hear our thoughts on here, and then you can go read our thoughts in a bit more detail with a bunch of different views, news, interviews, all that sort of fun jazz. So definitely give the website a glance. I don't know how we're going to edit this together, but if that was a good ad read, it sure felt like a really good ad read to me. So on to...
If an ad played, it was a good one, for sure.
Yep. Definitely listen to that ad. So anyway, on to the main topic. We teased it up at the front, but to get into the spooky October season, we wanted to talk about some horror games. We talked about that earlier, some horror games we're playing. But how about our perfect horror game that we could create, Sri?
The horror game we want to play.
Yes.
One day.
We, like I said at the start, we sort of did something similar with the fighting games around the time of Evo. So I'm not sure, specifically like you and I, we talked about like, I sort of made this like concept for like a Fallout fighting game that we bounced back and forth on. You were kind of going for like a Sony kind of mascot fighting game. I don't know if we'll necessarily like pick like franchises and stuff this time around, but I definitely have some ideas for like cool features and stuff that I would want in a horror game. Do you have anything that you wanted to say at the start here before we get into it?
Man, this was interesting because we only talked about it today, like, right? So we had like a day's prep, if you will, less than a day's prep, kind of going into it and thinking about it. And so there's definitely things that I feel like I could maybe have fleshed out if I was thinking more in depth or had more time for it. So this is definitely a first draft. We're trying to essentially create, at least from how I was approaching it, like a good elevator pitch for saying, hey, these are the elements of a cool that we think would be a cool horror game, and these are kind of like maybe the story that we're going for, the elements of the gameplay, the general atmosphere or vibe. And obviously we're doing this, like we're pitching this in like a best case scenario. Game development is hard and difficult and laborious, and the odds of something like this happening, unless like we just wake up one day and we're like, I'm gonna fucking do it myself, like unless like that happens, the chances that something like this would be implemented in a way that we're going to talk about is probably unlikely. However, if you are a video game developer and you're looking for some fucking nice, cool ideas that will probably make you pull your hair out, but could result in a pretty cool horror game, I think this is this episode for you. But obviously, this is all hypothesizing, and if you have any ideas for yourself that you think, oh man, this would be a really good horror game, feel free to pitch it in down in the comments below.
Yeah, essentially in another universe, if Microsoft didn't buy Activision for $69 billion or whatever, that money goes to this game. So, sky's the limit.
Yep.
So yeah, where do you want to start? Do you want to start on like concept or gameplay? Because I feel like that could maybe have like a different chart a different path depending on how we want to do it. If we start with like gameplay, I certainly have like a couple ideas of general broad structure.
So I think we start with the concept because I think that'll set the stage, that then we like know the atmosphere of both of our games, and then we can fill in maybe like the gameplay around it.
Cool. Yeah. I don't know if this is recency bias, speaking here, but I really do like the psychological horror aspects of The Evil Within and also of the Silent Hill games that I've played. And so I think it allows developers to be a lot more creative, not only in like the storytelling, but also the visuals. So at least for mine, I guess we should also say, are we both coming together to make a game, or are we both doing our own?
I think we're both making our own, but if somehow they both connect, I mean, hey, there's fucking more power to us.
More than the merrier. So, I think mine would definitely have like a psychological horror kind of aspect to it. I really like Resident Evil of what I've played, of a lot of like the modern ones, but I do think that it being more grounded as like a zombie game and like it's about like viruses and bioweapons and stuff, that's probably not what I would implement in my perfect horror game scenario. I definitely like in Silent Hill where it's like themes are very important to what's happening on screen, and to a certain extent The Evil Within also kind of plays with this, and it's like what you're seeing isn't exactly realistic, but you can design it to be fun for a video game while also being scary and while also being connected to the narrative, I think in a stronger way than kind of what I've experienced with Resident Evil.
So there's one kind of core concept I had. So obviously, I kind of sat down earlier today and I was just kind of like thinking about it. And there's one core idea that I had when I was approaching this game. I also was going for the psychological horror thriller type of genre, and I'm not going to say what it is just yet. But so here I have an idea for how the story would be, and it's obviously like this is like draft zero, right? Like I don't have like this is just you get 10 seconds with someone on an elevator, and I'm here I am pitching it, right? So and it's gonna be a weird fucking story, but it's just like of like where it goes or whatever. But like just bear with me. So the game follows a cop. He's like 10 years into his like service, and at this point he's just like whatever, like he's bored on the job almost, with like he's like his whole like routine is just a routine, he's just does the same type of calls around the same city blocks, and he's bored out of his mind as one can be, I suppose. And then he gets this call, and it's like, hey, there's a noise disturbance or whatever at this house, and he's like, okay, sure. So he goes to this house, and he realizes like, oh wait, there's there's something more fun. Like he thought it was just like a party or something. Like there's someone's, getting a little too fucking punch heavy in a relationship or something. Like he like something that he's used to. But he's like, no wait, there's something more fucked up going on. And then he's like, he's exploring the house, and as he's exploring, he realizes there's a basement, and he calls for backup. But then he hears someone down in the basement being like, please help. Like it's a little girl's voice, and he's like, oh shit. So he goes in, and it's like, oh no, hang in there. He's going in, and so it's like, immediately you can imagine the atmosphere shift from as he goes into the basement. It's like, where the fuck is what's happening? Where you're looking around, and as he's doing it, he sees like the tension's rising, like he's getting a little bit more anxious, and then as there's a sound, he looks over, and bam, his gun goes off. He shoots and he kills an old woman, just like an old woman that's like down there, that's like being trafficked. It's like human trafficking or whatever. Now, obviously, there's like an investigation, and and he's suspended immediately. And so he's at home, fucking, he's like, oh my God, I killed someone, and it's not who, like, it's not like someone who's a criminal. And as he's trying to like come to grips with that, the old woman, it has like, is haunting him. And so like
Mm.
he's being like in his own home again. It'll, he's being tormented in his own home, and he can't get sleep. And like the worse as it keeps going, he's like the less sleep he gets, and the more delirious he gets throughout the day. And then ultimately he's, comes to a point where he's like, wow, he's kind of maybe reconciling with this woman that he's killed. And he finds out like through like her memories of her deceased self that like she's haunting him through, like she's, there's communication there. And he finds out like, oh, this other person is responsible for like kidnapping a whole bunch of people, like, part of the human trafficking ring. And he's like, you
Sure.
know what, I'll go out with a bang. And so then he goes on essentially like a death run, and he's just like, I'm gonna fucking take the guy down. Don't care if I die trying. And the end of the game is him storming the castle, sort of thing.
Hmm.
And so yeah, that's the concept, but the storyline or whatever, but the core idea that kind of made it all happen was, I think a lot of horror games have this thing where, well, there's two things that I think horror games can maybe tend to overdo, and it really impacts how effective it is. The one that is, they show the bad guy too early, or like the creepy monster too early, and it's like, oh, okay, well now I know what it is, and it's a little bit less suspenseful. That's
Hmm.
not really the case here. That's not what I'm trying to go for. But the other one is, there's usually a very familiar power arc, I'll say. I don't know if that's necessarily the word for it, but essentially, a lot of horror games, you start off and you're powerless and you're weak, and you either stay that way the whole time, which is a stagnant line, and there's not really any change, and it can get a little boring, or you start off, nothing, and then you get a weapon, and then another weapon, and then by the end you're like, it turns into a shooter, right?
Hmm.
And then that removes some of the suspense. So my goal was essentially having an inverse of that. So you start out with the weapon, maybe feeling a little bit more confident. Once you get to the house, you're kind of being haunted in your own turmoil, uh, you don't have a weapon, and you have to deal with it, like unarmed. And then at the end, you get your weapons again, and you're able to, it's like you go out in a blaze of glory type of thing. So that was really the core idea, was, not giving you a weapon, but taking it away after introducing it to you, and then,
Hmm.
seeing how you do.
Yeah. I like the idea. I like I can definitely imagine like the sequence of like, well, we haven't really talked about like gameplay specific stuff yet, but I imagine like a
Yeah.
third person kind of camera like going down the stairs into the basement. It's very like dark and just like there's a bunch of junk and crap all in the way and stuff. Like it definitely paints
Yeah.
a specific picture. And the haunting stuff, I bet that would have a lot of different like, I don't know if like jump scare potential would be the right thing, but it's like a lot of like stuff where it's like the environment, I guess, could be playing tricks on you, is the way that I kind of like imagine it. Like I don't know if it would necessarily be like cheap stuff like door slamming and things like that, but
Well, it's because it's so on top of my mind. And I kind of said it earlier this episode about how, I really dug the way in which like Alone in the Dark does those like rug pulls.
mhm.
And I think that would be really interesting. Of like, oh, he's going to the bathroom, and then he's like, he finishes. Maybe he has like a monologue, kind of just staring at the mirror and being like, oh my God, what the fuck? I look like I haven't gotten any sleep or whatever. And then you open the door, and all of a sudden you're fucking, you're in a totally different place, not inside your house, and you're like, what's going on? And those kind
Mhm.
of moments, I think, are, like, let you get a little bit more funky and, like, abstract, to a degree, without, maybe breaking the narrative structure.
Yeah. I don't have like a specific concept for mine. More just like broad strokes, but in talking about this and like going for like a more psychological horror kind of route, I am reminiscing about Alan Wake 1 and 2 essentially, and I think what I like so much about those games is specifically more so two, but it definitely gets its roots in the first game. It's a situation that has essentially gone completely out of hand, right? And like
Right.
it's dealing with like kind of like supernatural stuff, and it's about like, Alan, he's a writer, and it's like his, due to various circumstances, his writing kind of comes alive essentially, but he's got like memory problems, so he can't remember what he wrote and all this other stuff. But what two kind of gets into more stuff is that, again, without spoiling it, because I think you have intentions of playing it at some point also, it's like time has passed and Alan has spent a very long time, essentially the real world amount of time between the first game and the second game, trying to fix this problem that he's created, and it's not fixed is how I'll describe it. And so it's like, I really like that aspect of horror, because I think you kind of mentioned like a lot of pitfalls that, not maybe pitfalls, but tropes that a lot of horror stuff kind of goes into. And I feel like the amnesiac character is one that is like a very popular one. And so like, I don't know if I would necessarily go in that direction, but I really like the aspect of Alan Wake's story in that he's trying to fix this thing, but it's just so incomprehensible, the forces that he's playing with. And it's like, you understand that there's like basically nothing that anybody could realistically do outside of there being like these, trans-dimensional gods or whatever that could wrap their heads around it. But it's just like very, I don't know, a person being stuck in a situation that they're trying to fix constantly, but being roadblocked at basically every single junction, I think is kind of the direction that I would look to in trying to figure something out. Maybe an amnesiac character is what benefits that type of storytelling in these games, because there's a lot of opportunities for the reveal, I think, for like an amnesiac character, and like you can obviously supplant
the
things,
twist of how it comes together.
Yeah, you can supplant things in the writing and the environment design and like the little notes and stuff like that kind of hint towards, an underlying story of throughout the the runtime. But yeah, I think that's definitely like the kind of theme that I think my perfect horror game would be playing around in. I think it's going to be really funny because I'm going to be describing all these things like psychological horror, a crazy kind of story like this, third person. It's like I'm just making Alan Wake or Silent Hill. Like, that's probably what it's going to boil down to.
That's what we need, the next big one. It is interesting though, because I feel like that might be one of the reasons why recently, not Callisto Protocol. I'm sure they wanted that out of Callisto Protocol, but Chronos. I feel like that's probably one of the reasons why Chronos has kind of gotten a lot of more positive feedback, is that it's sort of like this. A lot of the horror games currently popular are Resident Evil, Silent Hill 2 remake or whatever, Silent Hill F, and these are all storied like series and franchises.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting a new entry, like a new franchise in there, is like something to celebrate, because it's like, oh, there's something now, something new stepping into this pantheon, and we're all here to like witness it live. Like, we'll know when Chronos came out, and if they iterate on that formula and how it kind of develops. Whereas similar to how probably people are now talking about how, I remember when Silent Hill came out, or I remember when Alone in the Dark first came out, 5 years before I was fucking born. So, yeah. But, all right. Yeah. That's the kind of general setup. Now, then we can kind of build it out more, right? So we have the story, or the just the atmosphere of what we're playing. Then what do we have? What's the gameplay? Give me some of that maybe as well.
Yeah, so I think for me specifically, I kind of how I decided to go with Evil Within for what I'm playing right now. I I should also kind of preface, horror is not like my go-to genre. I like playing them around this time, and I've gotten better about that over, the last couple years. But it really isn't something that I have a whole lot of experience with, specifically like older horror games. Um, so I really like the approach that games like Silent Hill, Alan Wake, Evil Within, Resident Evil take with the third person kind of action hybrid sort of gameplay. I think I would definitely, out of all of those, I think Resident Evil nails the gameplay balance of like when you get ammo, it feels important, and it feels like when you miss your shots, it's like the biggest gut punch in the world. It's like, man, I just wasted those. Whereas I feel like Alan Wake, I was specifically like loaded on resources the entire game, so it never really became that much of a consideration. Similar kind of thing to Silent Hill 2 Remake. When I played that, it always felt like, as long as you're exploring an environment, you're pretty much well equipped to handle any situation. And like Resident Evil is similar, but I just feel like that they kind of toe that line a bit better throughout the entire game. So
Sure.
Mine would definitely be like a third person action game structure for the gameplay, right? This is the one thing that I think will be a bit different, is that like Resident Evil is obviously kind of goofy, right? It has camp with like the horror stuff. On the other end of that, Silent Hill is kind of like depressingly like dark and moody. I feel like for my specific tastes, I would really enjoy, I guess like Resident Evil 4 would be the closest kind of comparison point, but like something like an Evil Dead almost, where it's like, it's definitely like scary and it has the vibes, but it's not out of place to like take a 12 gauge shotgun and blow it like a mutated creature's head off or something. It's that very like actiony, like kind of camp, but I wouldn't want mine to be like too camp. Like basically I want the vibes that you get from a psychological horror game where it's like very atmospheric, but also I want it to be like fun first and foremost, which again, that might sound like obvious or whatever, right? But it's like, I definitely wouldn't want like to be so melodramatic with like the characters and the stories like a Silent Hill might go. But I also don't want it to just straight up be like, Leon whips out a rocket launcher and blows up 10 zombies kind of thing. So yeah, mine would definitely go for third person as far as the camera angle would go. I also think it would be really fun maybe later down the line in this hypothetical game development, scenario, to offer like a fixed camera mode, because I feel like so many horror games now, it's either the third person action kind of horror game or it's a fixed camera angle survival horror. Like there's a lot that do first person also, but I kind of feel like first and third person are very similar. Like it feels like even the newer Resident Evils that let you switch, it's like it really is just like a camera position change versus like mechanically changing a whole lot. Whereas I think that like if Resident Evil 2 Remake essentially shipped with the fully remade 3D third person part of the game, but then they also had like fixed cameras in the same engine that emulated the look of the original game, I think that would be like really cool for a horror game to do. And I feel like it's always one or the other with games coming out right now. It's not somebody trying to capitalize on both, and I'm sure it's extremely hard, but again, we have infinite money and infinite time and ideas for this. So
yeah, hell yeah. I agree. That was also something I was thinking about when I was trying to think of mine, right? Was this of what I would enjoy. And so there's a lot of I think part of it is that because we play and review games, there's a lot of things that are on my head or on the top of my mind. There's actually nothing on my head, as you can see, but that I've been like thinking about that actively influence how I was building this out. So again, as Nick has just said, this is the world where we have no corporate overlords kind of dictating what can and cannot be done. There's no money limit or whatever. So the idea was the start of the game up until he goes into the house or gets out of the car to go into this house is actually done in fixed camera like security cam footage. So it's like he's getting his donut, and like there's like a camera outside of his outside of the donut shop where you can see him getting out of the car. You go in, you go into the shop, and then there's a camera inside the shop, and then you go into the shop and whatever. There's like all that kind of stuff. I just came up with that donut example on the spot, but because it's very generic. But and then when he's leaving the car to get in to go investigate to the house, it switched to the body cam, and then the whole sequence is inside the house will be like body cam footage, but then once he's suspended, it'll be third person. And the reason why I do the prior is because it's sort of like this idea that everything that's happening beforehand is like hit the footage that's being reviewed to see if he's going to get suspended or not. So they're like, okay, let's review the footage of what he was up to. Let's look at his body cam, see like, and like kind of evaluating it is sort of like how I was picturing it. So then the rest of the game is all in third person, because then you're out of that, like you're the inciting incident is done. And now you're into the kind of the main kind of heart of the gameplay where things get more introspective and you can, get really lost in it. The idea of like switching from third to first person and like in a settings, just like switching it off, it is like an option. I feel like that's got to be so much work. So like I again, we're working with infinite budget and time, but it's just I don't want to be like, oh, because like I have to like limit myself to some degree, because if not, I could just be like, oh, and then you have the option to do this and then this, and
right,
you have a Fortnite battle royale mode in there.
Well, I think it also like you have like intention with the camera angles at the beginning there, so I feel like it would sacrifice that intention, or like it would compromise, I guess is the right word, that kind of intention, if it's just like after you get to the part where you play in third person, you can just kind of switch to whatever you want, like
yes, yeah.
I think it would also be really cool to see other moments maybe throughout like the narrative or whatever where the security camera look kind of comes back, like maybe like if he's being haunted in his house or whatever, he sets up like a camera to like record something, like being like, what the heck's going on in my house or whatever. And then it goes into that, and you could do all sorts of other stuff in, a fixed camera in that environment. I think that's a really interesting idea.
There's a few I have of like must haves and nice to haves in terms of like what I wanted for the game. And so, yeah, that's definitely the must have is like the what I said earlier about the switching of locations without you knowing, and then the other one is the switching of, I guess, POVs or camera angles to again make it intentional so that when it does switch, it feels like there's purpose behind it. It's not just like, ooh, look at the thing that's happening, like it's different now.
Yeah, it'd be like or it'd also be funny if it was like, or not funny, I guess, but the beginning of the game is somebody reviewing and whether or not they should be fired. And I think it would create an interesting kind of contrast where like when you play through the like storming of the castle at the end or whatever, if there's another review period and like maybe you mess with like what happens on like what you experienced playing through versus what the camera angle sees as the playthrough.
Yeah.
It could be a really good setup for like additional scares or like kind of questioning what happened, and it's just like, is him storming up the stairs to this house or whatever, is that actually how that played out, or like
is it as cool as he imagines in his head, or is it as punctual as he intended it to be, or is it yeah. There's definitely, and again, that's part of the psychological horror thing that I think both of us are drawn to, is that you want to have the story that's it's willing to fuck with your head a little bit, and that's where you get the fun. Obviously, I don't have a twist or anything like that involved, and that would probably take me more time to actually fully flesh out and think of. But man, I feel like there's certain games, and especially in horror games, I want that more than anything. Where, like again, we'll go back to Alone in the Dark. But as I was playing it, I was like, I'm waiting for this to really like send a point home where it's you establish a bunch of elements and different kind of set pieces. You have this antagonist, but like, where does it all go? How does it all come together? And there's got to be some sort of a twist at the end to make you go like, oh shit. Um, and again, it'll really depend. Alone in the Dark does it in like a totally like left field, like, oh shit. And it maybe in the moment you might not even be able to appreciate if you like it or not because you're just so shocked at actually what the hell is happening.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah. So definitely leading, like, playing with that POV to lead up to some sort of a twist would be interesting too.
Yeah. I as far as like visuals go, I know that like we've kind of touched on it here and there. I imagine for mine, I feel like so much of modern horror games like influences where my brain is at, and so much of it stems from like Resident Evil 2 remake. I feel like that was like the touchstone where Capcom, like, obviously Resident Evil 7 came before it, and like that kind of revitalized Resident Evil and everything. But I feel like all of the other popular games that we've been mentioning, like Alone in the Dark, Dead Space remake,
Silent
Silent
Hill
Hill,
2.
all of them are using Resident Evil 2 remake as kind of their touchstone, as like, this is
Right.
this is how you make a modern horror game in our modern times, right? And so like I feel like a lot of mine, of what I've imagining, just kind of falls into that category. However, I am always drawn to games with more stylistic visuals, right? And so, not to say that like Resident Evil, Dead Space, and all these don't have stylistic visuals. That's not the case. They do, but they are all like very grounded, and like they go for that kind of photoreal look, I feel. And I do think that is where my game would kind of differ. I do like just stuff with a bit more style. I like, while it's not scary, Psychonauts, I really
Mm.
enjoy that art style and how it looks like. I don't know if you would say like Burton-esque, but like it has that like
Yeah, sure, I can see it.
characters don't look
It's
like
a little, maybe it has a
realistic.
little bit more color than I think Burton, but
Yeah.
yeah.
But like, the moon looks like a jagged kind of like cut out of paper moon or whatever, right? And I feel like that's the kind of direction I would really like my imagined game to go in. I don't know if you'd really make it scary. I don't even know if that's really the thing that I like about horror games. Like, I definitely like the gameplay aspects of them and like the visuals. So like, I don't know how scary necessarily my game would be, but like, I just like imagine how cool it would look if it was like, I don't know, like just that hybrid cartoon, but like it definitely looks like kind of grody and weird kind of look. I feel like that would really play in an interesting way when you're trying to mess with these like crazy kind of warping environments, or kind of like with Psychonauts, right? You get placed in a level, and like they kind of explain it away as it's like in people's heads and like mental space and stuff, but they get to play with environments in a really fun way that something like Evil Within or Silent Hill, they do that, but it is also kind of like still grounded in that way, right? Like you still need like ground for your character to walk on and stuff, whereas in like a platformer you don't have to worry about that stuff. It's like, yeah, of course he's jumping across floating teeth, like that makes complete sense,
Yeah.
right? So like I feel like going for a more maybe Halloween-ish like look to horror is what I'm saying, and I'm not saying the like Jason Halloween. I mean like the actual like trick-or-treating, like costumes, exaggerated characters and stuff is kind of where I would be leaning towards in my overall direction with it.
Visually, I think that I I I, I find myself leaning more towards the kind of realistic. Again, everything you've mentioned about how everything you did want that. Um, I I think that kind of realistic visual style means that if you are willing to have a narrative that's also grounded, it'll kind of give you some more immersion,
Hmm.
which is kind of what what you're saying. But and that's still kind of the thing I would love for this game. But in playing Alone in the Dark, there's actually the game has a photo mode. And by the way, I don't know how many people that are playing games on like YouTube for like playthroughs will constantly pause their game for photo mode, but like I have to feel like I'm in rare company because I was playing the game and I'm like, oh, hold on, guys, hold on, and then I just break out the photo mode and try to get a shot. But
Hmm.
the photo mode has like a filter that you can have that makes it like pixelated, and I really dug the aesthetic that gave, and like it's almost like the game has I've already talked about it, or about the atmosphere and everything. The game has a sense of atmosphere already, but then when you make it that excellent, like when you make it crunchy a little bit, it makes it like just slightly different type of atmosphere that I think would be really, really interesting. So one or the other, I think, would be really, really cool. Either like realistic, or again, maybe again, if there is restrictions here that we're applying to ourselves,
Hmm.
then maybe we go for that. Like there's processing involved to make it look a little bit more old school, like PS2 game.
It is funny that you mentioned the specifically that filter for the photo mode, because I saw some of your pictures you were sharing with it activated, and it it's kind of funny because retro horror games, a lot of the scariness came from the abstract, right? Where it's like the
Yeah,
fidelity
yeah,
for
yeah.
these games was not the highest, so your
You
imagination
saw
kind
like
of
a
filled
few
in.
pixels that were mangled together, and you're like, "What is that?" And your like
Hmm.
imagination takes it from there.
In the modern time, we've reached a point with technology where you can put in crystal clear detail whatever it is, and
Yeah,
I think it's
every pore of the enemy is like as
mhm,
it's crawling towards you.
which has its own benefits and everything, but I think it is interesting because I don't know many other games that have like they have like the pixelated mode, but like specifically a horror game, like I don't know of many that really do that. And so I think it's funny that like in a weird way. Well, I should also ask real quick, is it only in photo mode that you can toggle that on, or can you toggle that
Yep.
on during gameplay?
No, no, it's just photo mode.
It'd be interesting if you would be able to turn it on in gameplay also, because it's like you're adding in more of that
Right.
abstraction back into the
Yeah.
equation, which would be like it could give you like an entirely different read on a game like that.
Well, that's the thing. Like it gives atmosphere, or it gives scenes different atmosphere, even though it's the same thing. It's just the way that those pixels, like the amount of detail you get from them, it both works against it and for it, right? Like if it, I think Alan Wake is one of those games. Or sorry, not well. I'm sure Alan Wake is also one of those games, but Alone in the Dark is one of those games where they do go through the effort to make it so that the areas are all detailed. There's good like light collision and all that stuff, like to make it really immersive. But if you didn't have that, and you were to turn on this pixelated mode where it kind of just crunches it up and everything, you are then as like you're essentially trusting the player to kind of do some of that filling in that like hard work of filling in the detail environment for yourself. And so yeah,
Hmm.
it'd be an interesting. So one or the other would be the one that I would want, I think, kind of going into this. There are a few things. Again, part of the idea is I want kind of horror concepts that I find interesting to be in there. So I'll mention some that I think are cool. Um, Last year I played a game actually around this time that had this implementation, and it is the mic integration from Quiet Place: The Road Ahead,
Hmm.
where essentially, if you don't know, if you're playing on the DualSense controller, you can unmute your controller, and if you're playing on PC, I think you can just plug in a mic. But you can unmute your DualSense controller when you're playing on PlayStation, and the game will pick up your game audio, like your real life audio, and if you make too loud of a sound, you'll get found out. Like the creature that's hunting you will find you. Um, Weirdly enough, Tomb Raider actually had a mode like that too, but it's not. It's like a game assistant. So like if you unmute the thing, you can say open map, and it would open the map for you, or like you can say switch weapons and it would switch weapons. Like, it's like a connect voice control essentially, which was super janky. But that's kind of what maybe I think got me thinking about this when we're thinking about what we want in this game. So yeah, definitely mic integration of picking up your mic audio and screwing you over in the game somehow. I don't think for the whole time, but like specific sections, especially when these like things get really weird and cerebral of like making like putting some more pressure on the player.
Oh, I just got an idea for yours specifically.
Yes.
It's cool functionality, right? But I think that I feel like maybe you talked about this with Quiet Place, where it's like maybe I'm just creating memories out of nothing, but it listens to your actual environment. But there's not really like anything that draws you to actually make noise out of the game, right? So like it's just kind of like a bonus thing.
You mean like there's nothing like a jump scare that's gonna like make you go oh shit, and then you like
Basically,
that kind
what
of thing?
I'm getting at is like for your concept, what I imagine is like there is functionality with the controller, so it's like to radio to the police, you have to shout into your controller, and that's what kind of like there's a mechanic use behind making noise, so that way you can subvert it and have like mechanics and the ghost or whatever. So it's like maybe something's happening in the house and it's like I gotta get to the phone, and it's like you get to the phone and it's like okay, now I gotta whisper into the phone or whatever to try to cut down the voice. I don't even know how you would implement something like that, but I imagine like that's at least a way that you could have the game react to the actual world, because I feel like playing Quiet Place, like it's cool, right, that it has that functionality, but there is nothing stopping somebody from just like turning it on, and like if they're like a hardcore badass at horror games, they just don't make any noise, and it just doesn't end up being a factor at all at the end of the day.
Well, that's the thing. Like when I played A Quiet Place, the only times I was ever really screwed over, and I threw a compilation video over on YouTube, but like there was one time where I said something like because I fucked up something and I was like, oh shit, and then like that one got me, and then there's another time where like I said something and my smart device on my desk I got activated, and then it started talking and I was like, oh, that's not what I wanted to. So like yeah, it's a little bit of different horror almost. Part of it takes you out of the experience because you're like, oh, now I have to think about the things that are in my surroundings, but it adds like it's a different layer. But I do like the idea maybe of like, I mean, this is weird, but like, back in the day, if you had like a DS, there's like a Naruto game on the DS where the DS has like one of those like mic holes, and so like when you're casting certain man, it's been so long since I've done Naruto or things. Is it like you use a ninja move? Yeah. So when you do that, to finish one of them, you have to like actually blow into the microphone hole. And so something like that, where it would be that instead of like, because I think it would be hard to get, say, like register, like, like yell help into the into the thing. I feel like that would be a little bit harder. But instead, if it was just like an audio gauge, and you have to like, you can say anything, but like it just has to be within the certain decibel range where it's like you have to whisper. Maybe something like that would be interesting for that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
And then I think that go ahead.
I was gonna say you're right. Where like I didn't even think about like the registering stuff, because that's even how it works in like Rock Band when you have the mics. It's like you don't actually have to say the words. Like you just kind of have to like pitch your voice to do it. So yeah, that would be a hard problem to overcome.
Well, so yeah, and then so setting it up as this like the radio because you're a cop, and then taking it out of context for the rest of the game would be an interesting setup and payoff. But also, speaking of how like the Rock Band thing, right? Like Tomb Raider, I spent most of the game like I would force myself to unmute my controller just to try it, and then I'd have to pause it because for some goddamn reason every time I went ooh, it thought I meant open menu. So like, like something cool would be happening in the game. I'm like, ooh, and then the game would pause, and I'm like, okay, well that's gonna take me out of the fucking experience. So I had to mute the game. But yeah, that's why like I think word recognition just doesn't. Obviously, things have come a long way in the last like 11, 12 years since Tomb Raider, but not much better. I wouldn't imagine that that's going to be top priority. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, the only other thing I was imagining was like your main character has to like write something down, like a sort of script essentially, and it's like that's your prompt in the game to be like, okay, this is what you have to say at the radio, like to get them to come. But like, yeah, again, the auto dictation software would probably have to be pretty sophisticated to be able to be like, oh, you didn't say this word right, so
Yeah, help was not on the way. Yeah, yeah. You got anything like that you'd want to throw in there, like another like a really cool feature that you either want to see in a horror game or have seen and you want
yeah,
to use for this?
I don't know. I am kind of intrigued, not necessarily by horror, but the sort of the like mic kind of stuff that you're talking about, and like the proximity chat based things in games like Peak and stuff like that. I In my mind, I don't really have a place for that that like, I would necessarily include that sort of technology, but I do think that that's interesting. I remember, I think it was for PT maybe. There was stories going around that Kojima wanted like people to like sync their phone up with the game or something, so it would send text messages and things to you. I think a lot of that sort of stuff, like the out of game things, they're a neat concept, but at the same time, I feel like it would run into issues that I have. This is going to go all over the place, but it would run into issues that I have with Wii U games, where it's constantly taking your attention away from the screen, which is where I feel like you want to be glued in for a horror game if you want to build up any sort of suspense or anything. So having like second screen stuff happening is like harder to do effectively for a horror game. So yeah, I don't really know. I think eye tracking stuff is also an interesting technology for stuff like this. Specifically, the one that I think is the most interesting, and it's not a horror game, but it's the game Before Your Eyes, where it has like tracking and the game progresses when you close your eyes, and like it has like it's tied to the narrative and the gameplay mechanics specifically. So I think there could be something cool there where it's like the big bad monster, like it's tracking your eyes, don't look at it or something, like try to avert your gaze or whatever, but like trying to like control your game, and it's like I can't look in the center of my screen. Like I think that could be something that would be pretty cool. I also get a little bit weirded out though when it comes to like the eye tracking stuff. It's like, is this data going somewhere that I don't want it to go to? So, yeah, I don't know. It's a bit weird.
I'm gonna stick to the PlayStation stuff because obviously it's kind of some of the stuff that I've already mentioned. I think there's some interesting stuff regarding haptic feedback and all that stuff. So one of the things, right? Imagine you're in one of the dream sequences or one of the moments where the character is getting tormented, and this particular antagonist of this section is like invisible, and the way you feel them is the footsteps that you feel on your controller. So if the footsteps are getting more like you feel them getting louder, you have to stop moving because it means that they're like, so essentially the monster can't see you and you can't see the monster. You can only hear each other or feel each other. And so you have to stop moving when it gets closer, and then it'll like, you'll get stronger and then it'll fade out because it's moving away, and then you can progress. But so that's the only way you'd be able to progress to that section is through the haptic feedback of the controller. I think that would be an interesting implementation of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if the game's done that yet.
There's it's not what you're describing, but in Astrobot they like to play with a lot of the haptics a lot. And there's
Right, right.
one that I really like is it's a very simple, like I don't even think you would call it a puzzle, but it's a wall that you basically rub Astrobot up against, and like he has his hand on the wall, and once the controller starts vibrating, that's like the secret panel essentially that you push forward into.
Ah,
So I could see like a horror version of that where it's like you have to move slowly and you're like sliding along a wall or whatever. And it's like maybe like when it starts like getting that the haptic stuff is where it's like, okay, stop, like, freeze essentially.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then yeah, I think that would be a because again, in a horror game, it would be more intense to kind of feel it in a more visceral way.
Hmm.
And then also as you know, you know me, I was just talking about it with Alone in the Dark, but I love photo mode, and I feel like there's not been a time where people have been fucked around with on photo mode. So I feel like there's a prime opportunity where like if you're like, whoa, hold on, this sequence looks so sick. Let me go into photo mode. There's like should be a chance that every time you hit the take the photo button, a fucking thing jumps out at you and like scares you. You know, like it has to be like give you that cause or to take the risk.
I also imagine like how every once in a while on social media or whatever they'll like show like a picture and it'll be like, look at the like, is that like a weird face back there? Like it could be a thing where it's like
yeah.
you take pictures and it's like
Just get
maybe there's like a window and they like superimpose like a creature like staring through the window or something.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
that definitely could have some fun. It would add like some more intrigue to like a casual person going into photo mode. I feel where it's like most of the time it's people that like you that want to set up like a really nice looking shot or whatever, but it's like see what like weird secret shit you find when you use photo mode and like stuff's just like popping out of in the background or whatever. I think that would be really sick.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of things haven't really happened in photo mode. Like there's not been a lot of interesting implementations of photo mode. I mean, I'm not saying that like there is good implementation of photo mode in terms of how many options that the player gets to play around with, but like I think maybe Death Stranding 2 is really the only one that where it feels maybe more integrated into the story than just hey, you can pause the game at any point and take a photo.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some games where like you have to take photos. Yeah, there's definitely some like one or two other games where you have to take a photo of this and you get like some sort of lore dump or like to progress the story you have to take a photo
Right.
of like a certain type of architecture or whatever. But yeah, that's yeah, the ghosts in the photos or the whatever something in photo mode. It's got to be there.
All right. Is there anything else that you really want to tackle this from? I mean, we've been going a
Yes,
little
I mean
bit long, but
the final thing I think is who do you want to develop this game? Is there a studio
okay.
that
Yeah, that's a
you'd
good angle.
think would bring it home? I have three, and so I'm definitely a pretty like look. If I was like I would love for Treyarch to make this game. Yeah, okay, sure, but I learned my lesson from Alone in the Dark and Pisces Interactive being the developer of that game. So I went with three picks for potential developers, all of which are very diverse. Diverse category of developers.
Uh,
Do you want me to go first
yeah,
while you wait, or you want to?
you go first. I have an idea of how I want to tackle this, but I need a little extra time
Sure.
to fully formulate it.
So like I said, I have three. The first is Unfold Games. They're the developers of this game called Dark, Darq. That's the one that I've played from them, but they've also made another game since then called Bloody Hell Hotel, which is a pretty funny name. But that one's like TBA. It's not officially out yet. That's like just like the next game they're coming on. But like Dark is a puzzle platformer, horror puzzle platformer. But you were talking about Nick, like Tim Burton vibes. Like Dark is Tim Burton as hell. So yeah, that's definitely like I feel like that they would be they're already in the horror space, and then you take them into like the more hyper real instead of just stylized. Though maybe honestly I'd look into Dark, man. I feel like it would be kind of what the vibes of what you're going for your game.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is a game that I know, or a developer that I know we're both familiar with. It's Coco Cucumber. Coco Cucumber
Sure.
has made two games that I've played, and I know one game that at least Nick has played. Echo Generations, as well as Ravenlock, and both very kind of retro-esque games. But again, that's just like them flexing their abilities. I think now you have, you throw in like this challenge at them. I feel like they would be really. I'd love to see what that studio makes of something like this. This kind of source material.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is kind of a wild card, but it is A44 Games. They are an independent studio from New Zealand. Their first game was Ashen, came out in 2018, and then their most recent game came out last year. It was called Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn.
Sure.
So I think they're the one, like, everyone had like a different tone. This one's the one where like the third person and like realistic kind of graphics and stuff, like that's where this experience comes in. So that's why I went with A44. And also Siege of Dawn, published by Kepler Interactive, of Claire Obscure fame. So there you go.
Kepler, they're having a big year. They also did The Altars, so they've been picking some
Oh
good
shit.
projects. Mine, I knew for sure what one team I would want on this is, and so I'm gonna kind of cheat here, and I'm gonna say this is gonna be a co-development. And
Okay.
I also don't think that this has any sort of reasonable way of happening in real life, for a multitude of reasons. But I would want Grasshopper Manufacture to handle the style, like the visuals, the trippy kind of level design, that
Sure.
sort of stuff, enemy designs, that sort of thing, the visual identity of the game. And I would want Motive under EA that did Dead Space Remake. I would want them to handle the like fidelity and the gameplay of it. So essentially you get, because I was thinking about it sitting here and I was like, Resident Evil 2, Dead Space Remake, Silent Hill, I feel like I have the most fun consistently when I'm playing Dead Space out of all of them, which is funny because it's really not, I think, one that a lot of people go towards much anymore. It's really like Resident Evil, Silent Hill a lot of the time. But it's like when you play like that Dead Space Remake, it's like, man, this is a really tightly designed game. And like, I feel like if it has like that kind of visual fidelity, audio design, and that third person style gameplay, but just the wackiness of Suda and Grasshopper, of like the enemy designs, the environments, the overall like aesthetic of the game, I think that's like a match made in heaven for me. Like, especially for this type of game.
That's definitely like a Hail Mary collab,
Suda does
getting
not
those
have
two together.
good times with his time working with EA on Shadows of the Damned and everything. So like that, I don't think would ever happen again. But
yeah,
a man can dream.
Yeah, we certainly can. So there you go. Those are our horror games. Do you have a name for your game, Nick?
Ooh,
I don't, but I'll try to think of one now.
It would have shotgun in the name. I don't know what specifically. It'd probably be a 2-word title. It'd be something shotgun, bloody shotgun. I don't know. That's probably generic, but it would probably have something with a shotgun, because I feel like the shotgun is like the survival horror weapon, right? And so it's like you would really want to impact like that with your character. So it would probably be that important that I would slap it in the title.
I feel like oh man, it's something with like psych or psychosis. I want like that kind of in there, but like, just for the for the hell of it, it needs to have like a Q in there, like psychic, but it's like the Q at the end. I don't know how that would work, but yeah, something with psychosis, something like along that line. I can't think of anything right now. I sprung that question on us.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, I was trying to think of like all I could think of with the cop angle was the precinct that you played, and so I'm thinking like psycho-synced or something. But yeah, I don't know how that works.
Psycho-synced. That's an interesting one too. Psycho-synced.
The synced is what like holds me up. It sounds a bit weird, like not like a real word.
Yeah,
I mean it isn't a real word, but
well, sure. But I mean, hey, fizzant is also not a real word. So,
true.
Yeah, we can take it. But yeah, there you go. Thanks for listening to our pitches. Let us know what you think of either the games we pitched, or perhaps if you have a pitch of your own that you want us to take a look at. If you're a developer and you want to use one of these, just hit us up. You know what I mean? Our DMs are open. Slide on in. Feel free. That's assuming that I don't make an extremely shitty version of what I just described myself, which is might happen. You never know.
If you have money and you want to make it a reality,
yeah,
hit us up.
yeah. But Nick, take us out, man. Unless you have something else to say.
No. Look forward to more kind of spooky conversations throughout the month of October. We do have a couple other ideas floating around for that. So if you enjoyed, do give us a rating here on YouTube, a like. Don't give us a dislike. Our egos can't handle that. So likes only here. Good vibes only. But check out respawnstation.com for reviews, interviews, all that jazz. And have a good night, a good morning, and a damn good